Hi everyone. When you ride a motorcycle, because of the lack of protection, if you are involved in a collision or an accident, you're likely to be injured. Unfortunately, this is what happens in this viewer's clip. I'm going to take a slightly different line with this analysis episode. I'll explain that shortly, but first of all we're going to go down the usual route of looking at each party and what they could have done differently. It's an easy one to start, the motorcyclist. For me, I don't think he could have done anything different. It's unusual for accidents to happen or collisions to happen where there's one party who is totally not to blame, but I think that's categoric with this motorcyclist. He was just unluckily in the wrong place in the wrong time. But let's have a little think about the lorry driver just for a little second. Now if we have a look at the footage to after when the accident happened, we can see where the lorry driver probably emerged from. It looks as though it's a little bit of a lay-by. And if you look at its close proximity to the road, I may be thinking, was the lorry driver's view a little obstructed when he was trying to emerge? Possibly. Did he potentially take a little bit of a risk where he couldn't see brilliantly? Maybe, but not from the direction of travel that our camera was coming from, because if you think about it, if he was turning this way, the cab was obviously to this side. So there's a couple of things with that I'm maybe saying the lorry driver pulled out without seeing properly. Sometimes I do honestly find lorry drivers do pull out before it's clear and they expect other people to stop for them. I understand the thinking behind that as well, because they're so big it's going to be very, very, very difficult for them to actually get out at certain times. And I would even be teaching this to students as well. If it was a particularly busy junction at a particular time, you can get them to creep and ask. But it was really, this whole incident started by a poor emerge by the lorry driver. So now let's turn our attention to our camera. And before I go here, this is sort of the different take that I'm going to go with on this video. This camera has been extremely brave for sending this clip in. YouTube's a horrible place sometimes when the comment section get going. So I would like to categorically state straight from the start, well done to the camera for being so brave and courageous for sending this in the mindset that it's going to potentially help others. Now obviously the camera could and should have done things differently. You could see this sort of happening a long while before the collision, and that's the key to my little bit of analysis from the camera's perspective. She saw things way too late. It's pretty obvious, again, as I always say when I get to replay the clips many times, but you can see the lorry pull out from the side entrance. And for me, the main thing is the motorbike starts to brake and it takes an age for the camera to actually react. Now, again, I've mentioned this in many clips before. People just peer a little space in front of the car. And I'm just going to run this clip with this area highlighted, and you can probably get an idea from what the camera actually saw and what they missed, and how understandable it is that their reaction was so late. So this is our normal view, and this is what I think the camera was probably looking at. There's a big difference, isn't there? Hopefully now you'll understand how easy it is to be caught out when you're looking at that little space just over the bonnet. Straight from the first email that I had from the camera, actually sending this clip in, she held her hands up and said about the mistakes she made and she would appreciate input. So I gave her some input and I asked her a few questions on actually what happened to the motorcyclist, and what did the police say, and how does she feel after this accident. And what I'd like to do, just quickly, I'd like to read her email. She said that the motorcyclist had injuries to his back and he was taken to the hospital straight from the incident, and he was surprisingly okay with me. He was more annoyed at the lorry driver. She said that she had her P plates on at the time, so she's obviously a novice driver, and she thought the biker as well as the people who stopped were understanding as well. After the incident, she felt very paranoid and left a lot more space between myself and other vehicles. It still affects me today, as I'm a lot more cautious on the road, probably more than I should be. The police attended and I was really scared, as I thought I was going to be in a lot of trouble, but the officer who spoke to me said that they would just put it down to driver error due to how new I was. No action was taken against this driver. She says that she pays a lot more attention to brake lights now and she's very wary around motorcyclists, which is a nice conclusion, that people with more vulnerability, if I could say it properly, do need to be watched out for more, same as cyclists. Whoa! The way I'd like to go with this now is I'd just like to quickly talk about the long-lasting effects of incidents like this. The motorcyclist and his injuries we've already covered. Fingers crossed he's back to normal. But what are the long-lasting effects on the camera? To actually know that you've been the main cause of injuring someone, how would that affect you? Well, it wouldn't sit well with me. But you have to try and get through these situations. You have to try and deal with it in your own way. I knocked a cyclist off 6 weeks after passing my driving test. I was coming down a hill to do a left turn in queue in traffic, and I turned without checking the left mirror, because cars back then didn't always have left mirrors, and the cyclist was coming down the left hand side and knocked him off. He was injured. And that stuck with me and still has stuck with me to this day. I'm a lot more aware of people passing side to side, Bob and Toms I call it, boys on bikes and twits on motorbikes, whichever side as well. So I'm more aware of that. So luckily enough, with what I do now, I've taken that into a positive and I can then pass this message on to other people. But how long would that stay with you, knowing that you've hit that motorcycle and injured that guy in that way? Well, it's probably going to be forever. So we need to do more and more and more to try and stop these incidents happening. It's good to see that this camera has changed the way she drives and changed her appreciation for more vulnerable people. Perfect. But it always goes back to the same thing for me. When people with a lack of experience are involved in accidents, people always try and rush through getting their test passed. And I get it, it's an expensive hobby learning to drive, but surely it's about time, because we keep on getting told time after time that young people are higher risk and they have to pay more insurance. But surely it's about time that we did something to maybe address this problem. Now, I'm not the person to come up with any ideas, but if this is a problem that we all know about, which it is, why isn't something being done about it? It's a nice little point to think about, to leave. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope to see you soon.